Today I'm going to start a series basically on people who have inspired me. Now there's a lot of people out there who have inspired me over the years, but I thought I'd start off with somebody everybody knows. Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee has inspired me from the first time I was starting martial arts, which was in 1973 in Oceanside, California. I first saw his movies like The Chinese Connection and that, and was really enthralled by what he was doing. Basically, throughout all my years and different style changes I've done, I've always kept in mind what he had to say. The most important thing I find today that has been helpful for me has been the philosophy he has lent us with his Tao of Jeet Kune and the other books that Mr. Little and Bruce Lee's wife have put together over the years. Now I'd like to share these philosophies in different groupings here and how I see them and how they fit into my life. And I hope it helps you guys out there and makes you read his books further just to pull in the philosophy. Now, a lot of people don't realize Bruce Lee had his bachelor's in philosophy, and I think that's one of the things that really built upon his art and his knowledge. And martial arts itself today seems to have less and less philosophy and more sport in it, but it's the philosophy that can keep a person going. So let's start sharing what I think about Bruce Lee's ideas in philosophy and life itself.
Ultimately, martial art means honestly expressing yourself. Now, it is very difficult to do. I mean, it is easy for me to put on a show and be cocky and be flooded with a cocky feeling and then feel like pretty cool and all that. Or I can make all kinds of phony things, you see what I mean? Blinded by it. Or I can show you some really fancy movement. But to express oneself honestly, not lying to oneself, and to express myself honestly, now that, my friend, is very hard to do.
I think one of the things Bruce Lee did was really try to make people understand who he was and honestly tell them who he was. And today, and with most martial arts, I think they are always about their styles, their systems, or what's the best. You know, it doesn't really matter that if you can express what you know and how you see it. That's what's important in our lives and how we transition through whatever we're doing, whether it's the martial arts, a field of study, being a doctor, to just being a normal person. To honestly express yourself tells you what you have learned and where you feel you are going. Always be yourself. Express yourself. Have faith in yourself. And do not go out and look for successful personalities and duplicate it. So then, if we're going to honestly express ourselves, we have to ask ourselves one little question. Who are we? Knowledge will give you power, but character will give you respect. I think that's an interesting thing that Bruce Lee taught right there. We can have all the knowledge in the world, and we can be the smartest person, the best doctor, the best lawyer, the best martial artist. It really doesn't matter. But if you don't have a good character, it really is a detriment even in the future, or if you don't see it as being important. Take no thought of who is right or wrong, or who is better than. Be not for or against. I think people today could benefit from just that saying alone, because I think there's too many people out there trying to find out what's wrong, what's not, and they're castigating people for having their own individual thoughts. Now, I'm for whatever a person believes in their heart and who they are. However, just because I might say something, maybe you don't like Bruce Lee, that oh, well, he's a bad person because of that. You've got to make sure you understand. Are they expressing themselves or expressing their dislike or other things towards each other? Respect is everything. It's not always that one person's right or one person's wrong. Sometimes both are right, but they can't get together and focus and come to a conclusion. And that's why I see today we have leftists and we have conservatives, but we never have people who walk down the middle to look at both sides. There seems to be a bit of a binary way to look at who are we? And in reality, who we are is a bit of a shade of gray, not a binary type of system. You also get the people out there who love to show off. And Bruce Lee did say showing off is a fool's glory. Now when you think along that lines, you begin to understand that there are people out there who will say, well, I'm the best martial artist in the world, or I know more than you do. And they tend to make sure you understand that. And it is quite a foolish thing out there. I know I don't know everything. I always am constantly trying to make sure I know a little bit before I go out and teach people. And I think that's one problem we have today with many other types of ideals in that there. If you are good at something, it's good to share it. Make sure you understand it. Real living is for others. Now, how many times have you been able to sit back and tell yourself, I've been doing this for other people? Or do you end up saying, it's for myself? One of the things I've always enjoyed and hope I continue to is teaching martial arts to people out there. It's a real pleasure for me to do that, but I just want to be able to share what I know out there, so when I go away from this world, there's at least some record. Maybe something I have out there will be useful to you, or even in the future. Those who are unaware they are walking in darkness will never seek the light. So, in seeing the light, you have to think, what is the light? Well, in most of our situations that we talk about here, it's the martial arts. If you walk around thinking you know everything and you refuse to see any of the other lights, you're not going to want to see it. And I think a lot of people don't understand how important it is to keep an open mind. Mistakes are always forgivable if one has the courage to admit them. But now, in understanding mistakes that are often made, how many times have you tried to cover it up? Oh, I made a mistake, or did this here. I mean, we're all guilty of it. I hope I'm not really bad at being that way, but sometimes we can be. Sometimes we can't face our mistakes because we're embarrassed or otherwise. And I think if today's society just sat down and said, hey, I made a mistake here, people are more accepting, or you'd think they would be more accepting. And their mistake, when they don't accept that a person has apologized or lived up to that mistake, then they still continue to castigate them. When somebody really says, hey, I made a mistake here, I'm sorry, can you help me, whatever, a person should accept them as being human and not infallible. Another thing I think was very important was the way Bruce Lee said to set up goals. A goal is not always meant to be reached. It often serves simply as something to aim at. Now, I think in many of our lives, we've often done that. We've set a goal that was almost impossible to go towards. I personally never thought I would make as high a rank as I have in the martial arts, because my main goal was hopefully someday before I die, make my 3rd degree black belt. I didn't realize at that point when I made that goal that I would exceed it. However, after that goal was met, I made an impossible goal to try and get myself to higher rankings in other systems. You just wait. I'm going to be the biggest Chinese star in the world. In actuality, he did become the biggest Chinese star in the world, but only after his death. However, it was a goal he was trying to reach. He wanted to share something with people. Yes, we know he had temper. Yes, we know he was human. He was fallible, and he was quite mortal. But his goals were there, and that was what focused him and kept him going. I believe without goals we have problems. But then when we get into our goals, we start thinking about how we've got to win everything.
Like everyone else, you want to learn the way to win, but never to accept the way to lose. To accept defeat, to learn to die is to be liberated from it. So when tomorrow comes, you must free your ambitious mind and learn the art of dying.
Because how many times have you really trained yourself to know what happens if I lose? What do I do with this? I mean, in life we always have failures, and we have to know how to handle them just as well as we do when we're fighting. The final thing I think I'm going to break down today in philosophy is the way Bruce Lee tried to help us to think outside of the box. One of the first statements that always comes to my mind when I'm training in the martial arts is what Bruce Lee said by, "Simplicity is the very key to brilliance." Now, he was smart enough to know that when he was training that there was something missing in the martial arts. Too many people stuck to the ideas of what their style or system was trying to teach them, especially in their forms and all that. I'm not saying forms are wrong, and Bruce Lee never really said they were wrong either. All fixed set patterns are incapable of adaptability or pliability. The truth is outside of all fixed patterns. Many of these patterns that he refers to there have lost their ability to be useful in a modern situation simply because people are stagnant enough to keep them from moving on or studying where the technique might apply or in different ways. Like a perfect example is in Shotokan. If you watch a backstance knife hand block, which is in several of the katas, people tend to think it's a block or a parry block, but they don't realize it's actually 4 or 5 different attacks, all in one movement. And that's something I had to come up with, and that's the philosophy I followed with Bruce Lee in understanding how I can break down my techniques. Yeah, there's many techniques out there. Absorb what is useful, discard what is not. Add to what is uniquely your own. Because how many times have we actually had a technique or that cause us problems because we didn't understand it or couldn't do it? We did not know how to apply these techniques. Knowing is not enough. We must apply. Willing is not enough. We must do. And I don't think a lot of instructors out there, to a certain point, allow their students to actually experiment and see how they can best apply those techniques for their own situations and understanding. And as Bruce Lee said, all knowledge is ultimately self-knowledge. I'm a big fan of a psychologist known as Piaget. And I think he said it best by once we learn something as a child, we begin to play with it. We'll talk about Piaget another time. But I think Bruce Lee understood what he was trying to get at when he was talking about using what you know and playing with it to see how it would work best for you. Learning is never cumulative. It's a moment of knowing which has no beginning and no end. So when we think about our knowledge and what we're trying to do in our lives, we have to make sure that it applies to us. And then when we're sharing it with other people, like we were talking about earlier, and when we share it with other people, we have to make sure they eventually grow at their own. Yeah, we have to teach them basic ideas, fighting strategies and tactics, but in the end it becomes your own fingerprint. It's the thing that drives you to become better as a martial artist or a doctor or a lawyer, whatever. But philosophy is something we all need in our lives. Something we can focus on. And I hope these little tidbits I've shared with you about Bruce Lee's philosophy and how I look at it has helped you guys out there. Now, if you like this video, give me a thumbs up down there. Tell your friends about it. If you haven't already, subscribe and hit the bell so we can notify you when we have a new video coming out. Leave comments down there. Tell me something inspiring that Bruce Lee has said that gives you a sense of knowledge and understanding. Good luck in your training, and we'll see you again here on Shihan's Dojo.
Empty your mind. Be formless, shapeless, like water. Now you put water into a cup, it becomes the cup. Put it into a teapot, it becomes the teapot. Now water can flow or creep or drip or crash. Be water.